Here, why did you take this one?
I want the sauce. Don't mess with my creamy jalapeno sauce.
Okay, I thought that might be might be a reason.
It's my creamy jalapeno sauce.
You would think that one would come. Okay,
Yes.
We already have people here.
I want to.
Can, I see two people. Can, one of you guys give us like a thumbs up or a comment or anything to tell me that you can hear us? Nothing quite yet.
Hello,
There you
Oh,
I can hear you.
Hi, Julie, can you hear us?
Hi, yes, I can.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay.
You're welcome.
Say something?
No.
Nope, just,
No.
Fingers.
You want me to be over there?
nope, I'm all good. Oh,
Okay.
are we like
Yeah.
turning the lights off and everything? Man, I feel like we're back in college. So this reminds me, I had this one class in college that book smarts is just like not my thing. And so I had an elective I had to take, and everyone on campus said, rocks for jocks was the class to take. If you wanted to just like easily get through a class. Problem was is that it was just like this, and they turned the light off every time. And I fell asleep every single class. I tried Facebooking while I was in class to try to stay awake. I tried Pinteresting. I tried sitting in the front row. I tried sitting next to somebody, like making friends with the person next to me and telling them to like talk to me throughout, or like, just kind of try to keep me alive. And every single class, I fell asleep. It was the most frustrating thing of all time.
But did you pass the class?
With the C.
Yeah.
I was so mad. Yeah, well, I didn't know that C's and B's get degrees until like after I graduated.
Nobody tells anybody that until after.
Yeah, well, I wish somebody had told me that beforehand. Oh, great, that was on recording. Okay, awesome.
Well, it was red flag for my daughter's first semester at Ohio State. You get a report that she's not doing well
Oh,
in
no.
a particular class. She goes, hey, C's and D's get degrees. I was like, we're not starting out in college with that comment. right?
Oh, no.
It's like, that's, I don't know if you want mom and dad, right, Jeff?
Yeah, I was so mad because when I started interviewing and like doing all of my like summer internships and interviewing for jobs and all that kind of stuff, nobody asked me what my GPA was. And I was kind of mad about it.
Yeah. Fortunately.
Kind of like offended by it.
There's people like you that. C's and D's get degrees.
Yeah, well, anyways,
Nobody asked me my GPA either.
this reminds me of that class, so I feel like I have PTSD from this layout. Okay, what time is it? It's 2:01. We are gonna go ahead and get started because I pretty consistently go over, so I'm gonna try really hard to stay in time for this class. So we're gonna have a lot of fun. This can be a very boring topic, or we can have fun together. And it's gonna be more about, like, this is talking about shift. And I feel like there's a connotation with shift where we think of like 2008 essentially, and that's not what today is. Today is wildly different. So I want you to rename everything that you've ever heard shift called and just call it an actively changing market. That's all we're doing, an actively changing market. So by the way, I have not introduced myself. My name is McKissack.
I came in because I was gonna do it, and you guys are talking, so I went out. I'm so
I know,
sorry.
I'm really terrible. Chelsea is always in the back going, introduce yourself. I always forget that part. I am the area director for the Ohio Valley region. I started as an agent and grew a team and got tapped on the shoulder to be an assistant team leader of an office in Texas for about 465 agents. So grew that office for a little bit, and then got the opportunity to launch a market center up in the Ohio Valley region. So my husband and I moved up here. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd end up in Ohio, and yet here I am. And then grew that market center. That market center has been open about 4 years now, and it's #1 in the board right now. So it's been going very well, and it's been a lot of fun growing that market center. Stepped out, replaced myself as team leader when it was time to do that, and got tapped on the shoulder to become operating principal of an office. And I now get the pleasure of working with all the team leaders. I fell in love with the agent side and consulting the agents more than I fell in love with the buyers and sellers. And so I knew that I wanted to do something on the leadership side. There was just something ingrained in my DNA that I loved the agent more than anything else. And so one of the ways that I found that I can have a greater impact on the agent is by working with the team leaders that run the offices that impacts the agent, whether it be through education or whether it be through providing resources. So it's been a lot of fun, and it's been such a pleasure working with Daly. I'll have one of the best team leaders in the Ohio Valley region. So I'm very, very lucky to have her. And I'm sure you guys know that. Oh, be quiet, Meg. So, all of that to say that, throughout my time in leadership, I've done about 2,500 consulting appointments, working with agents. And so everything that we're going to talk about is a collection of what I hear from this agent and this agent and this agent and this agent and this agent that I compile all together, and we talk about an hour. So we're going to be talking about $100 million agents. We're going to be talking about $5 million agents and what everybody does, because it's all lead generation and generation of ideas together. And we have a culture of abundance at Keller Williams. And so that means that we share what we do well and what works and what didn't work, so we can learn from each other. So it's going to make it a lot of fun. I'm going to have to figure out how to do this and this, but I will figure it out. I can do it. All right. I know I can do this. Y'all just may have to remind me if I forget on some pieces. I'm going to be reading some pieces because as we're talking about economics and shift, we're 50% talking about shift, the book, and then 50% talking about how economics impacts that for your buyers and your sellers and how you guys communicate that to them. And so there's going to be some articles that I'm going to be reading that I brought here today, so we can kind of hit both on there, and I find that's the most efficient way of doing this. So one of the reasons that we're talking about shift is because 8 out of 10 realtors in the market right now have never been through a shift, ever. There are really well producing agents even, but there are quite a few agents that don't know how to do repair amendments. They don't know how to negotiate an appraisal gap. They've never had to. And so it doesn't mean that they're a poor agent. We have people doing 30, 40, 50 transactions that have never been in a market and had to do that. They're fantastic agents. It's just they've never been exposed to a market that there's been a massive shift. And I'm sure there's plenty of agents, even some in this room, that have never been through a major shift, like we're going to call it the 2008 shift. And so everybody has different experiences of times that they got it. So what are other agents doing to prepare themselves and to thrive? Because the market share that you take in the shift, you typically don't lose afterwards. You continue with it and you build on top of it. And that's what we intend for you guys. If you look back in history, Keller Williams, agents in Keller Williams historically take more market share and grow in a shift, while other companies typically lose their market share, and they slow down in a shift. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So we've got, yes, okay, I definitely can't do this. Okay, so we've got all these different shift tactics, and we're going to be walking through each one. In the shift book, I saw you reading your shift book, by the way, here. So if anybody brought the shift book, we've got all these 12 different tactics, and we're going to walk through each one, tactically speaking, on how we implement them and what you can do differently to stand out. How do you act differently? What do you actually physically change in your actions in doing in a shift? So we're going to start with the very first one is get real, get right, and what this means. So Gary talks about this quite frequently, and what he means by get real, get right. A lot of these, I want to pause for a second, actually. A lot of these, they sound like what you're going to find on like a coffee mug in the kitchen. That would be typical for what you find in a real estate office or something like that. So it's very easy to hear these and to be like, okay, those are good phrases, but they don't really mean anything. And the whole point of what we're going to be talking about is that you walk out and you're like, I have actionable items that I know that I can do. So what does Gary mean by get real, get right? So get real means understand where are we realistically in this market? What does that actually mean? Are we realistic in our actions? Are we expecting these results when we're in this market? Because if we were in this market before and we were expecting these results, they lined up. But our market very rapidly has shifted and has changed. So are we still expecting these results in this kind of a market? So you have to actively shift your results and actively shift the way that you're doing things in your business in order for it to be real. So he says, get right. So that just means get realistic. So take the action, change your business plan. So we talk about doing business plans, but it's now October, which is business plan season. And so if business plan season is the time to do your business plan, you did it last October, it is now this October. Is our market the same or different today than last October? Different. When should you have started changing your business plan for today's market?
Last year.
The moment you felt it. And so I don't want you to look at it and say, oh my gosh, the market is shifting and going down. I need to decrease my expectations. Instead, you say, oh my gosh, the market is changing. How do my actions have to change to match up with the results that I still want? It's the actions that change in a shifting market. So we are going from what used to be a speed-based market. So that means that who can answer their phone the fastest? Who can be the person that calls back the sign call the fastest? Or gets the person from the open house to writing the contract the fastest? To now going to a skill-based market. We're going to be getting a lot more objections. We're going to be getting a lot more questions. We're going to be getting a lot more of people. Okay, one example of this actually is I'm going to talk about millennials for a second. You can tell them until you blue in the face that when I bought my first house, I had 17% interest rates. You can tell them that all day long and they don't care because they have never experienced it. So they have the pants scared off of them right now. And they just don't understand it. And they've never seen it and it's still scary to them. And so this is the moment when you break out the spreadsheet that Gary put together and Dale will have by the end of this class. Let me print that because Dale's not here right now. Dale will have by the end of this class, Gary put together a spreadsheet of how it is actually better for you to purchase with a little bit higher interest rate now than it was for you to purchase a year ago when you're paying 50 to 100,000 more over list price. So they have to make sense for people. You have to help them understand this. But there's just things that we're connecting with people to where sometimes when we move fast, so fast as real estate agents, I think it's always a perfect example to look at millennials right now that just frankly are scared. Objections all come from the root of what? Fear of something. Fear of not understanding. Fear of making a bad decision. Fear of not being able to go back. And so if you are trying to get over fear, what's the best way of real estate agents for you to be able to help with that fear? Educate them. Yes. But the only way to educate them, and this is the number one thing I hear about real estate agents, is real estate agents will talk like this, right on over their head. How is it that we can communicate with them that resonates with them, meets them where they're at, and we can clearly articulate to them in a way that they understand? It's kind of like us going and talking to someone who's selling us benefits. For me, that's like my nightmare, is being sold benefits, because there's all these different lingo and words and options and types and all that kind of stuff. And when you are talking to a benefits coordinator, then they're trying to sell you all this stuff and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not really sure which one is the right one. And you need someone who can explain it to you for your level of understanding. It's just not your specialty. It's not your experience. It's not something that you do frequently. So it's not that these people are uneducated. It's just they don't buy a house every year or they don't buy a house every month, kind of like real estate agents do. Okay. So we have to get in this section, we have to get very, very practiced at they used to be called scripts. They are now called conversation. It is very important that we get accurate on our conversation because the objections that we're going to be receiving and the questions that you're going to be receiving are different than what they used to be. So you need to start keeping track. I would suggest for you to start keeping track with what are the questions that you're getting now and just write them down. And then you can start seeing where's the pattern. And don't forget to look at, because they're confused. A lot of home buyers and sellers are confused right now because maybe they haven't purchased in this market. Millennials are 43% of the market right now. And so because of that, this is their first experience, or maybe their second experience when they haven't gone through in a while. then we have to be able to explain that to them, and you want to be able to clearly articulate that. And that means you have to practice those conversations. And practicing in your head is very different than practicing out loud. It comes out very differently. So one thing, I want to read part of this article. So the definition, one of the words that we hear going around outside of the real estate industry is a recession, right? Have you guys heard that? So you see it all over, it's clickbait, it's, they're talking about a recession. They're saying that within the next 12 months, we're going to be in a recession. So in 2008, there was an economic recession prior to there being a housing recession for about a year. It's about in 2007 when it started for an economic recession. So I want to give you the actual definition of a recession. It is a period of temporary economic decline during which trade and industrial activity are reduced, generally identified by a fall in GDP or gross domestic product in 2 successive quarters. So Q2 and Q3 of 2020 was technically considered a recession. And then an insane boom after that. We are technically now considered to be in a recession because we've had 2 negative quarters in gross domestic product. Now, if you look at 2008, it's like -20. If you look at now, it's like -0.8, -1.9. So there can be different levels of a recession. So before 2020, the US economy had entered into a recession of, take a guess, how many times we've entered in a recession since the Great Depression, which ended in 1933. Just take a guess.
20.
15.
15, you're really close. 13. Yep, 13 times. Now, if you kind of think back in your head since the Great Depression, you can really only name like 4 or 5, right? Well, technically speaking, there's been 13. So it's just a way for us to understand that recessions can show up in different ways and affect in different ways and impact in different ways. So let's talk about in the real estate industry. This article says that an acceptable definition of a market crash is a decline in pricing of 10% or more. Well, the market has increased in prices by 16.8% in 2021. We need to be prepared to hear, or what we need to be prepared to hear is the market is changing. Objections will change for buyers and sellers, and skills will have to change. And it goes back to the entire group of agents just don't know how to do an appraisal gap, which is just crazy. Okay, so the very first question I get asked by agents is, okay, great. Now I understand that we're in a market shift. So what's the first thing that I should do? The first thing you should do in walking into a market shift is have a P&L and statement. Do you know why you have a P&L statement? Not just to like understand what you have. Anybody know why? That's a very first step. You know where the money is going. You know what to cut and what not to cut. Whenever you are walking into a shift, you hear everybody screaming, cut your expenses, cut your expenses, cut your expenses. But some expenses you actually double down on. There's marketing expenses that you double down on, or prospecting expenses that you double down on. You're not going to cut your lead sources. And so how do you know what has the greatest return on investment? So I want to use this as an example. I have one of my agents in the market center that I'm OP of, that I heard that their Zillow leads had gone down and their agents started like asking around about other teams. So I called the Rainmaker and I said, hey, what's going on with your Zillow leads? And they're like, hey, we were getting 11 Zillow leads a month and now we're getting 2. And I said, well, are you going to keep Zillow? And they're like, well, of course we're going to keep Zillow. It's our lead generation method. And I'm like, can you put that money into something else and get more than 2 leads a month? And I'm like, probably. I had like $2,400 a month for that. For 2 leads a month. So how can you take that money, invest it, if not cut it and get rid of those leads? How can you take that money and get a greater return on investment? I also recently was asked by an agent, should I hire right now going into a shift? Bad time to hire. And the answer was, well, what does your P&L say? How profitable are you? Are you in front of your P&L? Are you behind your P&L? Where are you? What your P&L is the black and white answer of what should you do in a shift. It tells you where you're getting return on investment. It tells you where you're lacking. The number one thing I see on agents' P&L statements is they forget to invest in themselves. So in the section that talks about what classes are you investing in yourself, or your coaching or something like that, that's investing in yourself, your future self, that is the number one place where I see real estate agents lacking in. So you have to look at your future business and who's pouring into you for that. It's a big piece of it. Okay, let's see if there's anything else I missed. Oh yeah, so the other part, I knew there was something else that I wanted to add on this one. So in remarketing your business, there are lots of value pieces that you receive for free for being in Keller Williams. So oftentimes you have to re-look at things and see, is there a way that I can make this work? Number one, things change. Number two, in a market shift, when you're cutting all the fat is the unnecessary pieces. So I use Keller Williams Resources as an example, but I'll use even Canva as an example. Canva has a free version and a paid version. The free version gets the job done. Do you have to have, I'm not saying cut Canva as a whole and don't use it. I'm saying, can you get away with just the free version instead of the paid version? And the little things add up to the big things. So what is it that you can invest in that is already free and provided to you? I use this as another example. So I'm a complete clean freak. And so I cannot work from home at all. If I work from home, then like our regional team will have like a work from home day if we have calls all day long, and I just can't do it. I'll rearrange the whole house, or I'll clean or do dishes or laundry or something. I just can't do it. I can be there for like an hour if I have something I'm specifically doing that time, but I can't do it otherwise. That means I have to invest in an office for myself. Otherwise, my dollar per hour is going to go from this amount to this amount because I'm going to be looking at all the other stuff. And so sometimes you look at offices and you may say, well, maybe I need to put an office. Well, if you're like me, that's not the thing that you need to do because you're going to fall into distracted time where it's easy to do that kind of stuff. So if you're in a market shift, it may be time to invest in an office. Hope you guys have open offices. Invest in an office and be able to stay focused for the things that's important for you to be able to get done. So I use those as examples.
And was it Eric Forney that said every 6 months he calls his credit card company and asks for a new credit card?
Oh, I'm doing that right now.
Yeah, just to find out how much stuff occurs monthly that he signs up for, or the 7-day free trials that he forgets to cancel.
That is correct.
And he saved a lot of money doing that every 6 months.
Yes, so there's a couple different ways to do this. So my OCD portion of me, I have a spreadsheet that every single month I do a personal P&L statement and a business P&L statement, and I categorize every single charge so I know exactly where it goes. Press thinks that's a nightmare, so he will trade literally anything to not do that. He'll put the kids in bed and do the laundry and the dishes and everything. But if you're like Eric Forney, just cancel your credit card once every 6 months to a year and see what all is on there. You'll start getting calls real fast and emails real fast from people being like, hey, where's the money? What happened to your credit card? So that's a really interesting way to find out what all is on there. I actually had an agent call me last week, and she said, my Zillow leads aren't showing up. And I said, well, are you a Premier agent? Like, you pay for your leads? And she said, no, I'm not a Premier agent for sure. I said, okay. So I went online and I submitted a Zillow lead to her, and it showed up for her, and it was under find an agent. And what we found is she had 2 profiles. One was a Premier agent profile, and she didn't even know it. And this isn't like this massive agent. She does like 5 to 8 million a year, and she still didn't know it. So there's just things that you may not remember. I think that's a perfect example of you sign up for 7-day free trials, and it's just a recurring card, and it looks normal. Or sometimes companies will up the price on you and not tell you because it's written into the agreement that it can change the price at any moment without any notice. So you just never know. Okay, yes, I did go to the next one. Okay. So the next one is do more with less. So what is his name? I just forgot his name. Dan Sullivan. He is a business coach, and he writes these little tiny books once a quarter that are meant to be read in an hour and a half or less. They're fantastic books. Highly, highly, highly recommend them because there is zero fluff to it. It is just straight to the point. One of his books is called Multiplication by Subtraction. And it is talking about you can multiply your life by subtracting the either the things or the people around you. So I use as an example a minimalist. If your house is very cluttered, you have a lot to manage, right? And so you have less time for other things. If you are a minimalist, you have less to manage, and therefore you have more time for other things. It can be the same way with people on your team. So you can have the wrong person on your team, and sometimes your time and your production will multiply by subtraction, or oftentimes we find they're the right person in the wrong seat on the bus. And sometimes you can flip around those people. So in a shifting market, it's very easy to, in an easy market that we've come out of where there's a lot of transactions, for people to hide behind the market and for transactions to just easily come. I mean, it was pretty similar that you turn over a rock and there was a buyer there somewhere, for the most part. And so now as the market is changing and there's less transactions happening, then do you have the right people and the right seat on the bus? And you have to inspect that a little bit more. Now this comes with people's strength zones. What gets them excited? What fulfills them? What makes them happy? So this isn't just for you, it's for them as well. Because they may not want to speak up, they don't want to disappoint you, where they may not speak up and say, well, I don't really like this position. Like I really love being on your team, but I really don't like this position. So how is it that you guys can have a strengths conversation? What are the things that fulfill you? What are the things that make you excited? What are the things that you could do all day, every day, and not get paid and you'd be thrilled about? Of course, you're not paying them. You're not paying them. Yes, you're not paying them. But it's something that they're very excited about. So having that conversation, this comes back to just re-inspecting every single little piece. Okay, finding the motivated. So this is the lead generation portion, and we are actually going to talk about demand that's created through lead generation. So in lead generation, it is very easy to confuse action with making progress. Okay, so you were just reading the first chapter in Shift. Does anybody remember in the first chapter in Shift, what they say is the very first thing that changes in a shifted market? What is the very first thing that changes in a shifting market?
Mindset.
So the amount of transactions goes down. And so the leads will go down. The amount of leads. So that example that I used earlier about the agent, I was getting 11 leads and it's now getting 2 leads. The amount of leads that are coming in decreases by on average by 50%. So you have to prepare for how can I increase my lead generation by 50% in order to prepare or to continue to grow through a shifting market. Are you doubling down on something? Are you expanding your lead generation methods? What are you doing? You just have to logically know, okay, if I'm prepared for my leads go down by 50%, so this is outside lead sources, then what do I have to do to make up for that? If you have inside lead sources, like a database, it doesn't change quite as dramatically. Because these are the people that know, like, and trust you. It will change, because think about this. This time last year, our transactions for 2021 was at 6.1 million transactions. This year, they're estimating it's going to be 4.9 million transactions by the end of the year. So there are less transactions being had. And so your lead sources will change naturally for that. But it's the paid lead sources in a shifting market where people are much less about the speed and much more about the connection in those type of markets. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what this article says for the demand side. So demands is the amount of people that are out in the market. So it says when it comes to housing prices, everything ultimately comes down to good old supply and demand. Of course, other variables like inventory, inflation, and interest rates all matter, but they only matter as they impact supply and demand. For a crash to happen, we need to see a significant shift from an environment where demand exceeds supply to where there is more supply than demand. So many people believe that investors or iBuyers are leading the demand. Investors really truthfully only purchase about 19% of homes, In contrast, millennial home buyers account for 43% of all home purchases. Average mortgage rates right now are sitting, so this was, when I wrote this, they wrote about 6.5-ish, and I know depending on who you're with, and it goes up and down. So that's up by about 70% year over year. This is resulting in people being priced out of the market. An average of 14% of homes had a price decrease in the last month, which is up from 11% the month prior. So it's increasing monthly in the amount of homes that have decreasing prices. So NAR estimates that 15% of first-time home buyers will be priced out of the market this year. So it's important to create urgency. So as there is less demand on houses because of the rise in interest rates, they're not doing prices or offers so far over asking, but a lot of the homes are selling still fairly quickly. And we'll talk about who's selling and who's not selling quite as quickly right now. But housing prices in general have not, in the market, have not actually decreased. They're still going up a little bit. And interest rates are going up. So the large majority, that 15% of people are just completely getting priced out of the market and cannot purchase anymore. They can't qualify anymore. So that's where some of the transactions have gone. And then there's a group of people who are just nervous. If you know that 43% of the market is millennials and they're just terrified about rates right now, we have to educate them. I mean, I understand that you're not a lender, and yet we still have to justify it for them to be able to understand. So it says so far there's been a decrease by 11% year over year in mortgage applications. This is due in part with people purchasing more with cash, and other part with people being priced out of the market, either by home prices or increased interest rates. That is a lot, and there's also only change houses on average going from about 20 offers on a house to about 5 offers on a house, and now we're seeing 1 to 2 offers on a house. Would you guys agree with that, depending on the house? So what's important to remember is demand doesn't operate in a vacuum. You can't just look at the demand side of the equation. You also have to look at the supply side of the equation, which is the big story for right now. So I just heard this phrase that I think is just a beautiful phrase right now that just logically makes sense for buyers and sellers. So they're still talking to their friends that sold 6 months to a year ago. And they're like, oh my gosh, I got 20 offers on my house. They waived inspection. They gave us an appraisal gap. We got to stay in our house for 3 months afterwards at no charge. And then you're selling the house right now and it's going for like 3,000, 5,000 over. And you're like, oh yes, okay, we're still doing pretty good here. And they're like, where's my appraisal gap? Where's my staying in the house? Where's my, and in their minds, because in the absence of communication, people make up stories. We've got to communicate in a shifting market. So if we know that's true, then what is their thought if they hear what their friend did and the realtor got for their friend versus what's happening to them? What's their thought? It's the realtor that's the problem. I might have hired the wrong realtor. You have to set expectations for what the market is doing at the listing table. Hey, I'm very certain that you've heard from your friends that 6 months ago, 90 days to 6 months ago, you just had to leave your house for a couple of days. You put the house up on the market and then 12 hours later, you had 5 offers. Today's market looks a little different. So here's the script that I heard. What we're seeing right now is sellers are living in the past, buyers are living in the future, and realtors are stuck in between at this moment. As the market is actively changing, the sellers are used to hearing what benefits them because nobody's going to raise their hand and be like, I'll be the first to lower my price. They only do it when they're forced to, which we'll talk about that a little bit more. So a couple of different pieces of what you can do. Actually, I'm gonna talk about that next, but that would be a good script that you can use to set those expectations. You have to be able to show them. You can even print off the front page of the MLS report that has how many properties have gone on the market versus how many properties have gone under contract versus how many properties have had a price reduction. So you can also talk about that as well and bring that. But I would highly suggest for you to bring supplemental information, so it's not just coming from you, it's documentation for it. Because you may know some people, but you can have a high eye who's not about all of the statistics and numbers. And yet when you're talking about the difference of 15 to 20,000 for them, they all of a sudden care about those numbers and they want to see some justification as to why. So it's very important that you bring supplemental information, that it's not just your opinion on some of this. So let's talk about getting to the table. Yep. Okay, so getting to the closing table. There are different lead generation sources of what you can do. When you walk into a actively changing market, you look at your traditional lead generation, and top agents have 5 lead generation sources and 3 are their most successful. So you need to be able to list what are your 5 lead generation sources and what are your top 3. If you are doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this and a little bit of that, you're so diversified that nothing is really actually purposeful and going to lead to a great return on investment. So you have to be able to narrow it down and get super focused with this. So, to this page right here. Okay, so some examples on this. You can see, I like to use the door knocking one because nobody's ever really heard of that one. Where's door knocking? It's somewhere on here. I feel like it'd be over on this side. Number 7. Door to door canvassing. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So door knocking. So I'm going to use this as an example. You can go door knocking, and what's an average script for going door knocking?
Have a listing on the neighborhood.
I have a listing in the neighborhood. Do you know of anybody else who's thinking about buying, selling, or investing in real estate in the neighborhood? And you typically have your little clipboard or however you're keeping track of everybody. And does that feel exciting to you to go door knocking like that? No? Okay. So what if you had closing in the neighborhood, or what if one of your other friends in here has closing in the neighborhood? And because we're all friends and because we have a culture of abundance, not everybody is going to be doing this. And so you're happy to share with people, and then you can provide this at your closing table. What if you have a listing in this neighborhood and you have no listing right now? You do the door knocking because this is just not one of your 5 and you're staying focused on your 5. So you do the door knocking and you get to provide the value at closing. You go around to all the 10 houses on the right, 10 houses on the left, 20 houses across the street with a card that says, we're sorry to see you go, or we've enjoyed having you, or thank you for being a great neighbor, or something like that. And you go knock, 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 and they say hello. And then you say, hey, my name is McKissack. I'm a Keller Williams agent, and we're actually selling the property right back there at 123 Main Street. You take a step back, because when you do that, they go, when they open the door and they're like this. Okay, so when you take a step back and you say, I'm selling 123 Main Street, they inevitably go like this. Now, typically speaking, somebody is not going to go like this. So now that the door is open, they take a step back, it stays open. Now you have the body language that's receptive. So then you're able to say, we are selling the house on 123 Main Street. This is a we relationship now. We are selling the house at 123 Main Street. And the sellers have had fantastic things to say about the neighborhood. I thought it'd be really sweet if we provided them just a note at closing that the neighbor signed. Would you be willing to sign that? Is anybody going to say no? No? Okay, so now you've got your little, whatever you have it written on, you've got your card. And then you hand it to them. And they say, well, what am I supposed to write? Just write your house number and your name, or thanks for being a great neighbor, or something like that, right? Whatever you want to write. So we have about 15 seconds for them to write their name, think about what they want to write, and write their house number, correct? So you go 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi. That allows them to have the time to think about what they want to write. So you're not just jumping on top of them. And then they start writing, and you can see they're getting close to the end, and you say, you know what? When this was on the market, there was a ton of buyers that were really interested in this. And I feel for them that they're still looking for the perfect house. Do you know of anybody else in the neighborhood who's thinking about selling? Because they really like the neighborhood. How do you feel about that door knocking? And they say, oh, I don't know of anybody else. Okay, well, if you think of anybody, would you mind just handing the card? I don't care if my card ends up in the junk drawer. Just maybe keep it for a little bit in case you hear of anybody. because I really want to help those buyers find a place. Now this is value for them. Or an open houses. So I'm all about like get your card in the junk drawer, find a way to get your card in the junk drawer. I mean, raise your hand if you have a junk drawer. Like everybody in this room. I'm a minimalist and an organized freak, and I have a junk drawer. So everybody has a junk drawer. If you can make it in there, you're golden, because they keep opening it, looking for the scissors and the tape and all that kind of stuff. And they see your card, and it's repeatable marketing. So you can tell people, put it in the junk drawer in case you hear something. If you're doing an open house, hey, I just want to let you know I'm doing an open house on 123 Main Street right over there. And I wanted to provide you my business card because I expect for quite a few people to show up. If anybody parks in front of your house, will you just keep this until Saturday? You can put it in your junk drawer, wherever. And if somebody parks in front of your house, you can text me and I'll ask them to move their car. That's another way of doing it. You can, so rethink the way that you do your lead generation. What's a creative way of doing this? How can you make it fun? So I'm just really going down this door knocking path right now, but there's a million ways you can do this. When I was an agent, I had absolutely no database. I had to create everything from scratch. And I had an agent friend that on Fridays, we had a date every Friday. And her and I would go door knocking. She would take one side and I'd take the other side. And it was our consistent lead generation. And we would have competition if we could get the most leads. And we would just go from house to house right across the street. And it was just fun. We just made it fun. And then, you know, because you kind of get beat up door knocking and go have a margarita after. But I mean, you gotta make it fun. What are some things that you could do differently? How would you communicate with people? How can you get to them? How can you answer the question of what's in it for them? Your lead generation is significantly more successful when you can answer the whiffy question. What's in it for you? Meaning the person who's on the other side of the line. How can you answer that question? If you can answer that question, your lead generation will be significantly better. Okay. So catching people in your web. So this one is, it talks about internet lead generation. I just want you to think about how are ways that you can reach people outside of just calling them or just door knocking. So outside of belly to belly, how can you get online lead generation? So there's different pieces of what you can use. You have value provisions as being a Keller Williams agent that you can use for free. So there are things like the staging company that just came out that you can offer staging to people. A lot of people are nervous about staging because they feel like they have to pay this upfront cost. And maybe you create a staging company that's paid at closing, or you find a staging company that can do. There's 72 Sold just came out for real estate agents, where they're doing TV and radio advertising as well. And you can sign up for that program. What was that? 72 Sold. Talk to Dayla about it. Okay. Brand new. And actually, if you're coming to the Louisville Mega Agent panels, we actually have the person that's in charge of that, Stacey Onan, coming and talking about what that looks like, because people have like had to turn off their lead source because of creating so many leads. It's a totally different way than a lot of agents are doing it. But this was hired from a real estate agent brokerage that has joined Keller Williams and about 400 agents. And they just joined Keller Williams, and they're the #1 market share in all of Phoenix, Arizona. And they're implementing this across the country. So it's awesome. So for catching people in your web, think about how can you get to people outside of just the belly to belly business. The #1 way that you create more internet lead generation is by increasing your frequency. So this is where it becomes more is better. When you're doing the online world, more is better, because you have to remember, people, you have to be loud in this. And maybe this is one of your 3, maybe this is one of your 5, maybe it's not one of them. But stay focused on whatever you create for your 3 or your 5 sources. Okay, pricing ahead of the market. I love this one. This is one of my favorites. I'm very passionate about it. Okay. So in a changing market, like in a really good market, you have pretty good amounts in the market that you can price at. There's kind of this no man's land where it's kind of like, I'm pushing the market. But do you know what our #1 script was over the last 2 years? Sure. You want to press your hands at that? Sure. we could get. I mean, that's literally the number one, think about all your listing appointments you went on. And somebody said a price and you're like, sure, that's pretty good to me. I mean, it's overly simplified, but honestly, I'm very certain many of you use that script. And so that we got away with a lot more of this than ever before. And now that we so quickly, typically in a changing market, it takes a year or two to get there. We've done this in a condensed like 8 to 9 month period. So it's gone from this to this in like the blink of an eye. And so with, again, sellers living in the past, they're used to this because that's what benefits them. And buyers living in the future, they're looking at this, and the realtors caught in between, we have to set the expectations for both. And so there's being able to price out of the market. It's much easier to price out of the market right now when sellers have the expectations that they have and they haven't caught up with how the market is changing. I think they're seeing it because there's so much marketing and so much clickbait around recessions and changing markets and all that. And the housing industry is a really hot topic right now, but they don't want to believe it because it doesn't benefit them. You typically find things to support what you want to believe and what benefits you. So this is not beautiful, but honestly, I used to bring this on my listing appointments whenever the market was shifting. And essentially, so you can go to kellerinc.com, kellerink.com, and all of the images from the Shift book, from MREA, from all of the Keller Williams books, they are all in there. So you can use this. Excuse me. So this is not beautiful, but let's say you have, I'm going to go to shifting market. That's where we are. People have the expectations of like, this is the fair market price. This is where they want to start at. You have a couple different options. You can take it up here, and then they're going to end up chasing the market because in about 14 days, so it used to be 14 days is how long you had for the peak interest. Now it's like 5 days, right? If the house is on the market for 14 days, you're like, what's wrong with that house? But at about 5 days is when you hit your peak. So you've got a 5-day window. So if somebody's trying to price up here and they're not willing to do a price reduction in the first 5 days, you're kind of like, oh man, we missed the majority of the market. And how frequently is somebody looking at a house and they're going to come back and be like, we need to re-look at that house? No, people decide if they're going to buy a house in the first 18 seconds. So in the first 18 seconds, they walk into a house and they look around and they decide, is this the house that I want? Everything past that first 18 seconds is a confirmation of either yes or confirmation of no. So this is why your sellers need to scrub the front door. They need to make sure that the front porch is power washed. They need to make sure that that front entry area is clean. All that kind of stuff, because it's always confirmation. Now, if you walk in and it's like a completely decked out kitchen, that kind of stuff can change their mind. But for the most part, you're not going to have a mediocre house and then a decked out kitchen, or a mediocre house and a decked out primary bathroom. So it's typically even across the board. So, so a couple things that you can do here is if somebody wants to do this, you can write into the listing agreement and pre-write in price changes or corrections. So you can have that as a part of the agreement in there. You can also bring this and just explain to them, and if they're willing to like logically hear it, you can, the other thing is if somebody is up here, I was just talking about this with Tammy, if somebody is up here and if you get no showings, do you know what percentage you're typically priced outside of the market? No showings. You're typically about 5 to 10% priced outside of the market. If you get showings with no offers, you're typically between 2 and 5% priced over the market. You can typically get away with plus or minus because there is no perfect market price. So that's why it fluctuates a little bit. If they insist on doing it up here, you may want to introduce the idea of reverse offers to them. So this is where you have a showing. So let's say Mick shows my listing and he shows his buyer, and then his feedback is I mean, it's really nice, I just kind of think it's overpriced, or it's just not what I love for my agent, or for my clients, or it's not what my clients love. So I call Mick and I say, hey, Mick, based on your feedback, it seems like we're pretty close. Would price fix that? 'Cause there's only 3 things that people decide on the market that help them decide if they're gonna purchase. It's price, condition, and location. Well, the location is kind of an unfixable. You typically don't pick up houses and move them. So it's the price and the condition. So, and both of those are fixed by price. So, I would call Mick and I'd say, hey, Mick, it sounds like it's either price or condition for these people. Which one is it for you? And then he'd say, it's price for us. It's just overpriced for the value of what we perceive that we'd be getting for this house price. It's great. Would they be opposed to a reverse offer? And Mick can say, what the heck is a reverse offer? And I'm gonna say, well, you know what? We intend to be progressive and we're gonna write you an offer. And then now your seller gets to decide what you writing an offer at. And your seller's gonna be like, well, I want to write an offer at my full asking price. Well, clearly that didn't give us an offer. So what's your second choice from there? And then they write an offer for here. You have a higher likelihood chance of them countering the offer than you do of doing absolutely nothing. This is how you, as the listing agent today, are not a sitting duck on listings. For the listings, so we're seeing some people sit and we're seeing some people sell. And they can be 2 houses in the same neighborhood that are identical to each other, and one needs a little bit of work and one is completely decked out, but they're both priced perfectly accordingly for that. Right now, in today's market, what we are seeing is we're seeing the house that's decked, but priced according to being decked out, as that one is selling with multiple offers. We're seeing the house that is right next door, that is the same house, but needs some renovations or needs a little bit of love on it. Even though it's priced accordingly for that, we're seeing that one sit. So you've got a couple of different options. You can do the reverse offers on that one. You can also offer Keller Concierge. That is available in Columbus. That means that your seller can borrow up to $60,000 or $70,000.
I was second time.
Yeah, it's right around there. Let's just say it's 70,000, right between 60 and 75-ish. But $70,000 from Keller Williams for them to renovate their house and have a return on investment. Who else is offering that right now? No interest rate, no payments for 12 months. Who else is offering that right now? If you're going up against other agents and they say, why should I hire you? Well, I've got a couple of tricks up my sleeve that I can guarantee we're not going to be sitting ducks. You can guarantee something. That you're not going to be sitting ducks. You can't guarantee that they're going to respond, but you can guarantee that you're not going to be sitting ducks. You can also offer Keller Concierge, where they can renovate their house, not have any payments or any interest rate for 12 months. And they can have a return on investment should their house need some love. Sometimes they just need like $2,000 worth of love, and it's not that big of a deal. But if they don't have the money, they want to use their own money, you can offer them. So there's multiple things that you can do.
And on top of that, the local group that's doing the work, the home stretch,
Contractors?
we've got, it's Home Stretch is the name of the company. They partner with them. I have several agents who've been using them, and their contractors reliable. They show up, they get it done, so people can get their house on the market.
For sure.
They couple with the Keller Concierge.
Yes, so they are vetted by KWRI, so they have insurance, they're drug tested, they're, I mean, like, they do the whole kit and caboodle on these people. Like, it's everything. Okay, so this one's a little prettier, but it's just kind of talking about the days on market and the amount of money that you're leaving on the table, and it just kind of hits the same thing. Oh, great, okay, once again, I'm super fine. Okay, so, changing the market. Has anybody heard of Ben Kinney's 555 method? Okay, so when you are at a listing appointment and the seller says, hey, I don't understand. The last agent that was here said that my house was worth $350,000 and you're telling me my house is worth $315,000. Why is that? Or they call you and they're like, hey, I'm going to speak to the other agent. And we're like, can you tell me why so I can get better? They say, well, they told me my house was worth $350,000. Who would you pick if you were a consumer? The one who tells you your house is worth $350,000 or $315,000? Okay, so if you have to be able to justify why is it, and set the expectations before they're trying to pick the other person about why $315,000 is actually the number. So you would ask the question, okay, let me ask you this. When the previous agent was here, did they show you the comparable houses? Yes, they did. Okay, great. When they showed you comparable houses, did they show you comparable sold houses? Yeah, they did. Okay, great. So what they were doing is they were showing you houses that sold 30 days ago, 60 days ago, 90 days ago. Typically, the sold houses will go anywhere from 6 months. We try not to go to a year, but we'll go anywhere around 6 months. But the thing is because the market is actively changing, then we have to do something where we have to keep up with it. So I do the 5-5-5 method. Or I always did 3-3-3 because with the inventory we have, there's just not enough to do that. So you do 3 past, 3 pending, and 3 actives. So you have the past, the present, and the future. So now you're not just depending on the past to sell the house, you're looking at the market of the present, which is the pendings, what is actively going under contract today, and the market of the future, what is currently active, what just came on the market. What are people deciding between right now? And the expires are the failed future, or the failed past, I mean. Yep, you're exactly right. Okay, standing out from the competition, we really kind of talked about this one with their style to design, which is the new segment Kellerwinds came out for staging, being able to offer Keller concierge, being able to offer, let's see, there's one of the things that we talked about. The other thing, Keller concierge and, also being able to talk about reverse offers. So it's just how can you communicate differently? And you have to put these as talking points in your listing appointment. Okay, next is creating urgency for people. So, okay, I said that I was not gonna color, but I lied. It's a good one. Am I gonna mess it up? Okay. I've totally written on a board for charging for it. So, the average market, and most realtors believe this too, would, maybe the red one works. The red one, okay.
The basket.
Okay. I'm on board for this. You guys even know which one's working. Don't work it yesterday.
You can erase that stuff to the left if you want to. That was from what we taught yesterday.
Yeah, I'm just gonna do it right here. Okay, so the average market believes the market goes like this, correct? Yes, we have down markets, we have up markets. We have down markets, we have up markets, and then we have markets going in between the two. Is this the way that the real estate market actually acts? You'll look at me like it's a trick question. It definitely is. Okay, so this is how the market really actually acts. Right? Okay, think about someone who bought a house in 2007. Here's 2007. And then 2008 rolls around. What does that person look like in 2007? A dummy, right? If they held on to that house today, what do they look like? A genius.
Yeah.
So when people are saying don't try to time the market, this is what they're talking about right here. Historically speaking, markets increase. Now, expectations of what's happened over the last 24 months, you're not going to gain 100 to 150,000 in equity in 12 to 24 months, but this is something to consider. Hold on to it. Be willing to commit to it if you're willing to do that. Okay. I'm sure there's going to be something that's going to pop up. Okay. Expanding your options. So that means that you have to know financing options. This one's really simple. I know that you are not loan officers. Take your Keller mortgage rep or whatever rep you guys have here out to lunch and ask them, teach me ARMs, teach me like all these different types of options that you have. There was something that we just forgot.
He's back here. He's
He was
like,
live.
Oh, hi. What company are you with? Keller, yeah, fantastic.
He has an office here in our office.
Oh, I love it so much. Okay, so Keller Mortgage has been teaching and started with my top 20%, and they pretty much tackled it afterwards and was like, you have to teach us all over again. They have some great information to share. So take them out to lunch or have them do a class in the market center of what are all the financing options that you can provide to your people. You can even offer to people as a MOFR, which is make offer for immediate response, on how to shave off 4 years from your mortgage. No extra payments, nothing. There's ways that you can do this. So you will get smarter by talking to them. I'm not going to pretend to know all of that stuff or be a loan officer. So take them out to lunch. Okay, master of the market at the moment, being able to explain, you should be an economist. I knew that economics was important to me when I was very young when I first started. I was 20 years old when I first started. And my very first thing I did is I went and did an open house, and I just went for gusto because I had no reason as to why not to. And I got 3 appointments in my first open house. And my very first appointment, the next day, I sat down with them and we were going through the buyer consult, and they said, how long have you been in real estate? It didn't feel very appropriate to say 48 hours. So they did sign with me, and then right after they left, like less than 5 minutes later, they texted me and broke up with me, which I was pretty mad that they didn't like break up with me in person. But all of that to say, I decided in that moment, I know I have a baby face, but I'm going to position myself in a way that nobody can ever ask me again how long I've been in real estate for. And so I kind of started going to all these classes, trying to figure out what worked for me. And my team leader at the time would teach economics. So I went to one of her economics class, and then it took me a few months to get here, but I did an open house that weekend, and I just regurgitated some of the things that she said. Frankly, I had no idea what it meant. I think I was 21 at that point. And I was just repeating what she said. I had 2 or 3 people come back to that open house and go, I've never heard a realtor talk like that before. Will you represent me? You really sound like you know the market. I was like, me? Yeah. Like I found something. It's what works. Nobody else was talking like that. Your job as a real estate agent is to be an economist of choice. You are not there to make decisions for people. You're there to help provide education for them. Okay, so I want to talk about the supply side. So we'll be done here in probably the next 5 minutes. So we'll hang on for 5 minutes. So supply side. So think about this logistically. How do prices in the housing market or any market decline? When sellers cannot sell their homes. Only when houses sit on the market for weeks or months will sellers consider lowering their prices. No seller is going to proactively raise or lower their prices. They need to be forced to do it. So this means we have to shift the conversation that we use with sellers to exchange or to change expectations. Their friend sold a house in 12 hours with 20 offers. It's possible yours might take 2 days with 1 or 5 offers. The negotiations look different. Or over list price, appraisal gap, inspection. Tell them the market looks different today than it did 90 days ago. At the beginning of the housing market recovery following the Great Recession, we saw an inventory defined as total number of active listings on the last day of the given period at about 2 million. During the busy summer months, pre-pandemic, we were having about 1.6 to 1.7 million during the peak summer selling months. Right now, inventory is sitting at about 600,000. Wildly different. So this is supply. So think about that. In 2017 to 2019, prices were still going up, and we had over 1.5 million homes on the market. Now we have 600,000. So supply remains over 1 million properties less available on the market than it was pre-pandemic. So that's why it can't be such an extreme shift for people, because we're still 1 million away from the amount of supply we have on the market. So if we've got supply and demand, we have done this with our demand and we've done this with our supply. There's still a gap between the two. So we're still in a really good market. It's just balancing out, and we have to get used to it again. Okay, some people are speculating the market will crash because prices have gone up so much, but that can't happen with the market dynamics that we currently have. Inventory comes from 3 places: new listings, foreclosures, or new construction. New listings are trending up a little bit, and estimated at 51% of homeowners now have a mortgage interest rate below 4%. Ding, ding, ding. Here's an objection we're going to hear, but my interest rate is so low. What if you offered, if you have a listing, to do a buy down for people? Because if you do $30,000 of a buy down, I know that sounds like a lot. I'm averaging the average sales price is a little bit higher. Let's say you do $30,000 of a buy down. They're getting about $200 more bang for their buck per month on their mortgage than if you just gave them $30,000 off on the house. That's an interesting one. Let's see. They don't want to sell in a more expensive market with stiff competition, with a higher rate, creating a higher mortgage for the exact same price home. Some say that foreclosures are gonna pick up due to COVID, although it seems as if the forbearance program did what it was intended to do. And people have so much equity in their house that they're just selling it instead of going into foreclosure. Mortgage delinquencies have dropped for several straight quarters, and this is different than 2008 because people have so much more equity. Construction permits have started and increased, but completions have not actually hit the market yet or increased because the labor market is super tight. Supply chain issues have prevented builders from completing homes, and because the labor market is super tight, it's been hurting with getting some permits through quickly. So they would need construction completions to increase by 80% for us to catch up where we need to be with new builds. The change in supply and demand is necessary, so drastically needed that it's not likely for it to happen suddenly as a crash. Another difference between 2008 and today is a large part of 2008 crash was because of the financing rules and the types of loans being given out. The housing market impacts almost every market. When you buy a house, you pay for movers, get a house cleaner, a carpet cleaner, a new washer, a new dryer, a new refrigerator, yard work, flooring, countertops, all that kind of stuff. That all puts money into the market. So all that money is flowing into the economy. So if they want less money flowing into the economy and they want less jobs, then they have to slow down the housing market. You just happen to be the housing market. So last year, 6.1 million homes were sold across the country. They're estimating for it to be about 4.9 million now. And that is a large change in unit count. So that's across the country. Okay, last thing is bulletproofing the transaction. This is the last thing that we're going to talk about. Real quick. Bulletproofing the transaction. Has anybody heard of the promise before? Yes. Okay. So the promise is a script that you can use with buyers and sellers. It's conversation. I will get this right. It's conversation that you use with buyers and sellers. I'm still getting used to changing that word. So in the promise, you can say, so let's say Mick is my seller. So I say, Mick, I really want to make a promise to you. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Great. My promise to you is I cannot promise or control how other people react in the market or what's going to happen. What I will promise is that by the end of this transaction, you're going to look up and you're going to believe there's no possible way for there to have been a better experience.
Wow.
I will know that I have completed this promise if by the time we get to the closing table, you've given me a referral because you so badly want someone else to experience the experience I gave you. And if we get to the closing table and you have not given me a referral, I'll know that I've dropped the ball somewhere and I'm going to want to know where that is. Is it okay if we talk about it then?
Sure.
Fantastic. The father of the promise, his name is Frank something, I can't remember his last name. He is in a very small market, does over 600 transactions and over 400 of them are from that one script of repeat referral. And then he has scheduled times, he has 3 scheduled times throughout the transaction that he asks for referral. How's the experience? But that's how he asks. How's the experience? And it reminds them of that promise. Instead of saying, you got anybody else? So all of this to say with shift. So we walked through every single one now. All of this to say with shift is you reimagine things, you think creatively, and I'm struggling with that one. And these tactics from shift, they're all still relevant today, even though it looks different in this changing market. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. It's a couple of different things. So I am on the path right now to become master faculty. I teach quite frequently, but I kind of like fly under the radar with Keller Williams. They told me that I need to actually get certified to teach this stuff. So I have to have evaluation. So I did not plan for it to be black and not show very well on this board, but you can use this QR code or you can go to kwueval.com and I would really, really appreciate it. I have 75 transactions and they gave me a deadline of by the end of the year. So I would really appreciate if you guys would do that. You can just go to kwueval.com and then it has the directions how to do it on there. At the top, you select Ohio Valley region. And then you select My Market Center in person. For the people that are on Zoom watching this, you'll still select in person because I taught in person. This says personal perspective, definitely not. This is shift 1-day workshop. So you'll scroll down and click shift 1-day workshop. And then when you go to instructor name, you're gonna have to scroll all the way to the bottom and it says instructor not listed. Literally click that. And then when you click that, a box will pop up and you can type my name in, which is right here. Okay, well, you guys do that. Anybody have any ahas or questions or anything like that? Anything that you heard differently today? Yes,
What are your top sources for market information?
my top sources for market information. So I have a couple of different places. I usually try to teach economics once a quarter-ish somewhere, so it makes me keep up to date with it. I usually try to follow sources that are on either side of the political spectrum, and then also conservative and liberal and kind of all over the place. And so honestly, there's this chart that it says like what side of the spectrum it's on and like how accurate versus not accurate they typically are. And I'll typically go to a couple of those different sources and see what everyone's saying. And so like Wall Street Journal or what's some of the other ones? My brain fart, where they came from. I can see the app on my phone, but it's just a bunch of news sources that I go to and I just kind of piece it all together. And then listen, and then Gary Keller does some market updates pretty much quarterly also.
Columbus Realtors does an amazing job of compiling data, market data, and publishing it once a month, right around the 21st of every month.
It's called the housing report.
We need to type it in.
Yes.
I know it's hard to see how to type my name on there. And the last thing. Did you get your question answered?
I can't find the name of the course.
Shift 1-day workshop. So it's shift : 1-day workshop.
1 hour.
I know real estate agents better than that.
And one of my biggest ahas was, in the absence of communication, people make up stories. That really stuck with me.
Yes.
To be like the educator out there.
Listen, I'm telling you, that is personal and professional.
Right.
Oh, man, yes. Yep. Yep, and it's very easy, because this will be the difference between you being recommended as the agent or you not. It's how well you set those expectations. And then they have to just like, when something happens, whether it's working for you, not working for you, they have to justify it in some way. So they're doing that by creating a story in their mind, whether it's positive or negative. Yep.
The 30,000 buy downs, a lot of people have questions right now. Is that something we should just take up to and verify for more information?
So, okay, so this is a great example for the $30,000 buy down of interest rates versus just providing them $30,000. One of your reasons that you take your Keller Mortgage rep out for lunch or come to their class, it's because it's not your job to know the details of how it works. It's your job to know that it exists. And then you provide the option to your consumers of, hey, you've got solutions. You are the solutions provider. Or you can say, you've got these different options. So they're like, I like the price of this house. Do you not like the price or do you not like the payment? Because for the most part, people really care more about the payment than they care about the price. So if you care about the price more, what if we looked at the price or the payment more? What if we looked at the price of this house, but instead of offering $30,000 less, what if we write into the contracts, they provide $30,000 worth of buying down the interest rate? And then I wouldn't just leave it up to the agent, like send it over and hope for the best. You got to pick up the phone and you need to explain to the agent, hey, my buyer wanted to submit an offer $30,000 less. Although they get better bang for their buck to ask for $30,000 worth of mortgage payments by now. And then they understand because they're like, they want $30,000, but they wouldn't quite think so differently about it if it was asking $30,000 less. You also have to manage the expectations. So in a market right now, you've got 3 types of agents. You've got the agent who has been through it and thinks they know exactly what's happening, but every shift is different. You've got the agent who's never been through it, and is not showing up to classes like this and has no idea what's going on, and you've got the educated agent. You never know what you have on the other side of the table for the person that's the listing agent and the person that's the buying agent. And so oftentimes, how you best represent your client is by managing the expectations and giving the other agent the conversation to have with their clients as well. It's a lot of communication.
Rob, what's the maximum contribution seller can do on conventional?
It really depends on the down payment, so anything less than 10% free.
Three.
Anything between 10 and 20% would be 6%.
Okay. So to give you an idea, we used to do buy downs all the time until the government took it away. That was part of the issue. People weren't prepared for the rising interest rates, but a rule of thumb used to be, if you spent $1,000 on a buy down, it was the same as a $2,000 price reduction. So it's twice as effective as reducing the price.
Yep.
On your payment.
You can also put it in agent remarks. Seller is willing to, I mean, maybe this is a conversation where they're like, okay, so if you have a super urgent seller, and maybe they're reaching out to iBuyers. I know all these iBuyers are like shutting down their programs right now, but maybe they're interested in iBuyer. So you can say, well, we can do two things. Number one, we're gonna do reverse offers on everybody that shows the house. Number two, what we'll also do is I'll put in the agent remarks of the seller is willing and ready to do a $10,000 buy down of the rate. And then that's great. I mean, we used to do like carpet allowances. I don't know if anybody remembers carpet allowances.
Oh, yeah.
And those were great, but then people would be like, oh, well, they're already expecting to do that. So I'm gonna ask for the carpet allowance, and then I'm gonna ask for like an extra $5,000 or something like that. This is a way to hit the hearts of what people are nervous about right now. What they don't understand, what they haven't experienced. It's a conversation of the moment, rates. So because the conversation of the moment is rates, we have to learn more about rates than we normally would have.
So Rob, what is some legal verbiage according to underwriters that we could put in there to make, as a seller, to make that enticing for buyers?
Yeah, so great question. We actually have market material that I can provide if you're a listing agent that, you know, shows the benefits of buy downs and the price reduction as far as monthly payments. So we can do all that stuff for you if you use telephone.
Sounds like a great class.
That's what I was thinking.
Okay, reach out to Bill Service. I don't know. I talk to him all the time. Don't know how to say his last name. Reach out to Bill. He's taught this class multiple times in other market centers and had super success with it.
Let me come out to agent for all.
Yep. Okay, thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it. If anybody needs any help with the evaluation, let me know. I'm happy to. And thank you for everybody who did it. Thank you.
I think we made it up to 30 people, including people.
Yeah. Thank you for everybody who came on Zoom.
Yeah. So fun.
All matching, they should all matching.